going on, everyone? So we got some other news from Production Weekly. Filming has been pushed back once again to January 2025 and will film in Atlanta. The film will officially star Neve Campbell and Courtney Cox. Sidney Prescott and Gale Weathers will face Ghostface again in the 7th installment of the slasher saga. So, a couple things. One, according to Production Weekly, we kind of know now when this film is going to start filming. It does make sense now, given that there's a new Kirby film in the works, right? So it kind of feels like they're trying to get all their ducks in a row. Kind of feels like they're trying to make sure that they get everything worked out, everything flushed out. Are they going to film both films kind of simultaneously? Are they going to film both films together? Because Kirby's supposed to be in Scream 7. So do they do something where they're filming her and her scenes for Scream 7 and then also filming her and her scenes for the upcoming Kirby film, right? Like the little spin-off film. That is a real possibility, right? Maybe we end up getting these kind of back-to-backs. The time of shooting, right? The location for when they have the location is longer than usual. Now, that could be just, better safe than sorry for like reshoots or, Scream has done things in the past where they'll shoot multiple endings and stuff just to kind of make sure that things don't get leaked, make sure things don't get put out there that they don't want out there. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. Look, I have said this before, I'll stand by it. Like, take as long as you need. Just make sure the film is good, right? Like, if you just keep prolonging it and then you give us a subpar film, then yeah, it's like, what was the point, right? But, I'd rather them not rush it, right? After losing Jenna and Melissa Barrera, we got the news like a month later or whatever, they're still doing this and Sidney's involved or Neve Campbell's involved as Sidney and all that. And it's like, okay, that's great. Like, again, give me Scream. I'll take more Scream. But in the same breath, like, I want to make sure that, you're doing right. Like, I want to make sure you're giving us a quality Scream film. I don't want something where it's like, oh, well, this was pointless. Like, this, like, take your time. Flush out what you need to flush out. Work out what you need to work out. Make sure you get all your rewrites and everything done. Get all your filming together. But it does kind of seem like they're probably going to be working on multiple projects, right? Kevin Williamson is supposed to be, directing Scream 7 and also apparently producing and potentially directing the Kirby spinoff. So it does kind of lead me to believe that they're going to be filming both simultaneously, which could be very interesting. Now, beyond that, got confirmation that this is, once again, which I don't think is a surprise to anybody. There's been rumors going around about this for a while. This is going to be a Sidney and Gale focus film. This is going to be centered around Sidney and Gale. Look, I'm all for it, right? Again, I'm in the camp of I'd like to see them eventually move off of Sidney and Gale. I know some people feel otherwise, and that's fine. Like, I get it. I grew up with Sidney and Gale. I love Sidney and Gale. I'd love to see them in these films forever, but, it's just, there comes a point where it's like, you got to go a different direction. There comes a point where it's like, I also see a lot of people that want Sidney films also want Sidney to have a happy ending. How can that happen? You can't have both. You can't have her constantly dealing with Ghostface and her family in jeopardy and whatnot. And at some point, it kind of becomes unrealistic. At some point, it kind of loses its luster, right? It's like, how many times can Sidney just get completely brutalized by Ghostface? Same thing with Gale, and survive, right? Like, Scream has always done a really good job of being based in realism, right? It doesn't get too over the top. Are there moments, right? Is there movie logic moments? Is there unrealistic moments? Is there, over the top moments? Sure. Of course. It's still a movie, right? It's not a documentary. It's an actual movie, right? But it's done a good job of keeping things as realistic as possible compared to many other horror films, even other horror slashers, right? And that's one of the elements that I really love about Scream. And it's like, how long before Ghostface just gets lucky? At what point do like 5 people just come together and all just go take out Sidney at once, right? Like, at what point do, even with as prepared as Sidney I'd imagine is and will be, at what point does Ghostface finally win, right? Like, I just think at some point you got to go a different direction. But again, I understand where we're at. You have the Kirby film, which again I'm excited for, but I have my reservations, right? I personally was not a fan of Kirby in Scream 7. I not that she was in it, period. I was not against that. Like, sure. Like, I was pumped. I was disappointed in her character. Right? The FBI agent didn't really make a lot of sense. They didn't really give us much backstory. Like, all the details were kind of just like throwaway lines and passing. Right? Like, there's just so many questions with Kirby and her character. Right? Like, even the explanation of how she survived was kind of a throwaway. Right? Like, I'm hopeful that Kirby with Scream 7 and then this upcoming film, I'm hopeful that we get more explanation, we get more backstory. Maybe they're saving the kind of timeline and everything for the actual series. If that's the case, then fine. I'm okay with that. Right? But like, you look at Scream 6 and it's just like, Kirby being in that film, like, hadn't served no purpose, right? Like, Kirby's character literally could have been anybody. It wasn't something that pertained specifically to Kirby, right? It wasn't like, like Kirby served this grandiose purpose. No, it was just kind of like, oh, here you go. Like, here's Sydney, or here's Kirby, right? Like, I hope that they do a better job writing her character in Scream 7 as well as with this film. Now, I'm more hopeful or more excited for it because of Kevin Williamson. I think Kevin Williamson should be able to kind of, because it was his character, he was, better hands-on with it rather than the new writers, right? Like, it seems like they've struggled writing the legacy characters. Right? Because same thing with Sydney and Gale. Sydney in Scream 5, Gale in Scream 6. Right? Like, they haven't done this great job of, like, writing these legacy characters. So I'm hoping with Kevin Williamson, who, he created all these characters, he has a better understanding. He can kind of keep things along. But, look, with Jenna Ortega and Melissa Barrera and their departure, right? Them stepping away, I get it. I get why, Gail has been in every Scream movie. I mean, she's been in more than Sydney at this point, right? So, Courtney Cox coming back isn't a surprise to me. She's also always been like a self-explanatory character. She's always been a character that, like, you don't really need like, why is Gail here? Well, because Ghostface is attacking, right? She wants to get the deets, right? She wants to get the info, right? Like, so Gail's always just an easy built-in character. Right? It's Sydney that's the one you got to kind of do a lot of explaining on. Right? You got to be able to explain, like, how does she get involved? Why does she get involved? Why after all this time is Ghostface going after her? Right? Like, there's just a lot of things that Sydney's not just this easy built-in character anymore. Right? She's got a family. She has children. She has all these things that, she has more to lose now. She has things that she has to protect, right? And are you going to be able to kind of unpack everything? Also, there's a lot of rumors going around that Sydney's family is hardly in this film. Like, why establish Sydney having a husband and having children if you're not gonna give us the chance to experience it, right? Like, yeah, like, it'd be cool to see a scene or whatever, but like, if all we get is like, oh, here's, you get the opening scene or whatever, and it's just Gail, Sydney and her family, and it's just like they're living their best life, and like, I want the details. How is Sydney as a mother? Is she overprotective? Is she overbearing? Right? Is she, do her kids kind of look at her as this, monster because she's just too much on them, right? Which would be explanatory because of her children, because of her past life and her losing her mother and all that stuff and the trauma she's dealt with, right? Like, how is she as a wife? Is she a handful? Is she tough? Does she have all these walls? Does she have all these things that that, Mark Kincaid has to constantly navigate and get over the top. How is Mark Kincaid as a husband? How is he as a father? Right? I mean, we don't know much about him, period. Right? Like, it's just, you have a real opportunity here that, again, it's all rumor, but if the rumors are true, kind of sound like they're just going to kind of brush over that. It's like, why introduce that to begin with if you're not going to really expand on that? It's just going to kind of be throwaway and passing. I'd like to see some real depth, right? And then Gale, like, same thing. Like, I don't want Gale in this film just to say we have Gale in this film. That's kind of what it felt like in Scream 6, right? Was that she was just kind of in the film just to be in the film. The only thing that she did that entire film was discover the shrine room, but it wasn't even necessary because Detective Bailey tells you at the end when he's like revealing his plan and everything that he was gonna show it, but Gale beat him to it. And, she is a really good reporter, right? Like, so the only thing Gale did that was worth anything in the film wasn't even necessary for her to do. Because it wasn't like, she really kind of threw a wrench in my plans by revealing this, right? Like, or like he was there at the time and it's like, yeah, I had to go run and, pretend like, yeah, it's just, I feel like they dropped the ball with Gale in Scream 6. And then Sydney in Scream 5, like, again, what purpose did she serve? Putting on the tracker, after she puts on the tracker, she looks at Gale and says that Gale could have done it, right? Like, like, her being the hero and kind of, taking on Ghostface and all that stuff, right? Like, we saw Mindy was alive at the end. She could have been the one to do it. And it would have made a lot of sense because Mindy is Meeks, and Randy was supposed to be the savior in the original Scream until they changed it. He was supposed to save the day and get the girl, right? But obviously, again, that didn't really work out. And they went a different direction, but it would have been a nice little callback, right? Like, I'm all for it. Again, I grew up with Gale and Sydney, right? But I want right by them, I want to see their character. Like, I don't want them to just have more films just to have more films. I want you to expand on their characters. I want you to expand on their stories. I want new depth in Gale, right? How is Gale dealing with Dewey's death? How is she dealing with another attack in which she probably should have died? How is Sydney coping with just motherhood and the family life and all that stuff? Does she have the perfect life? Is it this white picket fence type lifestyle, right? Like, there's so many things that you can unpack in this film that I really hope that they do it. They don't just kind of like, like, again, I'm all for Sydney and Gale, but as long as there's a purpose, as long as you can continue to drive the story and drive the narrative. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, a past question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? What are your thoughts? You excited? Do you think that, like, yes, this is going to be great? Sydney and Gale are back. However your thoughts are, whatever your opinions are. How do you feel about the movie getting postponed a little bit? Love to hear. Let me know down in the comments. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. It's me enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe to the channel. What are you doing? Hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one.